All right, welcome everyone to part one of many of our CEO series. And today we have Michelle Stevens, co-founder and chief nursing officer of Oath Care. And today we'll be talking about demystifying financial equity in health tech. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. It is so good to be here with you all. And to Sharon, thank you for the invitation. I am a clinician at heart. And so when I came into health tech, I had no idea what I was getting into when it came to financial equity. So I'm really excited to discuss a little bit about this. But before we do, I would love to jump into actually stop and breathe for just a minute. This is something that my team and I do before our first meeting of the day. And it helps us just take a break, a pause. We come into these meetings with a whole bunch of things, and we just want to be able to reset, try to get our nervous systems back to homeostasis. And hopefully this can be something that you use in a quick and easy way. So what this is you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold for 4 seconds. So you can use the box to kind of guide your breathing. I'm going to set a timer for a minute, and then I'll let you know when we get started. Okay, ready and begin. All right. I don't know about you all, but that minute kind of feels a lot longer than it really is.
Thanks, that was good, Michelle.
Oh, I'm so glad.
All right, tell us about Oath Care. Tell us about all the great things that you all are doing there.
Sure, I'd love to. First, I'd love to give you a little bit of background on myself and, how I came into Oath. So I've been a pediatric clinician my entire career. I was inspired to go into pediatrics when my brother passed away from a congenital heart defect when I was 7. And that totally shifted our family. My mom had undiagnosed anxiety, possible depression. And so, I really started to evaluate that when I experienced the tremendous amount of stress that parents and children undergo while in the ICU. And so my first job as a nurse was in the pediatric intensive care unit at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And I felt absolutely powerless and just unable to intervene. I didn't even know kids got stressed. I wasn't taught it in school. And I just started looking into it on my own and realized the associations of adult health outcomes and adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And I got fascinated around the topic, just like absolutely captivated around the dose response correlation to 7 out of the top 10 chronic illnesses we face in the United States. And so I went into pediatric primary care as a pediatric nurse practitioner to try to prevent those tertiary care experiences, and realized there, like, ooh, pediatrics is broken. Like, oh my goodness, how are we just measuring and tracking height, weight, and head circumference in kids when like over 80% of their neurobiology is formed by the age of 5? And, got really discouraged over the care recommendations and protocols that I was delivering to women and children that weren't rooted in maternal and child research. Black box contraindication this, and half the dose that, and just not feeling like I was giving solid advice and recommendations and failing moms. So I decided to go back to school and do my own maternal and child research. So went back for my Ph.D. at UCSF and got with the foremost researchers in early childhood stress physiology, and studied specifically the biomarker of autonomic nervous system reactivity, and came out of the program being like, oh my goodness, this research, over 40 to 50 plus years of research, is ripe and ready for the clinical setting. I want to get it out there, and not really finding a place in which to do it until I serendipitously met my co-founder in the back of a Chinese restaurant in San Francisco at a mutual friend's birthday party.
Wow.
And we started talking about our interests, and she has a fascinating background in public health and health tech startups. And, the day after, we started working together ever since. So that's my story around Why Oath. I really believe that if we can support parents to be positive, consistent caregivers in their child's life, not only will they be healthier humans, but they will quite literally shift the trajectory of their child's health outcomes by buffering the experiences of stress. So that's what we're doing with Oath. We are a platform that serves the fertility, pregnancy, and pediatric space. We do this right now in kind of like a single player and a multiplayer mode. So the single player mode is that the mother will be matched with their own care team, and their care team consists of a stage-based specialist, a mental health therapist, and a parent guide. And they can ask any and all questions 7 days a week, and no question is too small. And so everyone gets to hear what each other is saying. So the issue is addressed with data and evidence by the specialist. It's met with mental, emotional, and spiritual support by the therapist, and it's met with, that anecdotal, tried and true wisdom from the parent guide. And then our multiplayer mode is that you get these forums, these stage-based communities. Right now we have 5 that parents are surfacing their wisdom, their moment-to-moment experiences of parenthood, and they're being met with the wide array of specialists that we have on our platform. So we have doulas and fertility navigators, and we have lactation and sleep consultants, and speech and language pathologists, and nutrition and exercise experts, and pelvic floor therapists, and early child development specialists, all to speak specifically into the experience so that we're getting just the information that then we can take on as parents to be those positive, consistent caregivers, and just to be confident in what we're doing, and knowing that we can take that information and make the best decision for ourselves and our family. Wow. So that's it. And that's what we're up to. So we're available now to download off of the Apple App Store and Google Play Stores, and I'll share the link later in the chat. But what we're here today to do is talk about financial equity. Let's get into it. So in startups, it is common for employees to receive ownership in the business as a start of their compensation package, usually given in the beginning of their employment. This is a powerful shared upside incentive, and the better the company does, the more it's worth. But this is different than how many other types of partnerships work. It's much more common in a clinical practice setting to see something like profit sharing. Like, for example, if you have 6% partnership interest, you get 6% of the profits. I'll never forget when we were interviewing for like our first pediatrician, our CMO type role. They asked for 50% ownership of the company. And I was like, I don't own 50% of the company. So that's, that just kind of, alerted me to, whoa, this is like a whole different sort of
Yeah,
equity that we're dealing with here.
it is.
So to be clear, in the tech context, your equity is a tradable asset. So you can sell your ownership at some point in the future as a part of an initial public offering or IPO. You may hear that term a lot. Or also as a secondary sale or upon transition of ownership, like when your company merges and is acquired by another company.
Okay.
So let's go on to the next slide. And let's talk about your equity grant. So there are several different types of equity that are commonly granted in the startup world. I'd say the most common is your ISOs, or your incentive stock options. Your NSOs are pretty similar, but slightly different. They're called non-qualified stock options. And then you have RSUs, or restricted stock units. That's usually reserved for folks or for companies that are a little later stage. But each of these types of equity are unique, and you should know the type of equity that you are being granted. They're granted in different ways. That's important as well. So they have different legal and tax implications. And I'm not a tax attorney, but you should look into the structure of the type that you are granted, or ask for help if you have any questions, possibly even seek legal advice.
Yeah. I will say that that's what I had to do. I had to seek out an attorney, and I talked with my CPA, because it is very confusing if you're not dealing with this like every day.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, it's just also unique, like no company does it the same. So even getting advice from, what your company has done or what other companies have done, it's best to really understand what your specific company is doing. For equity grants structured as stock options, you are being given the opportunity to buy shares in the business at a price fixed to when you join the company. So this price fluctuates depending on how good or not good the company does. But you are not being given the shares. You still have to purchase them. Your options will be assigned a strike price, which is the price at which you can exercise your option to buy the shares in the business. The strike price is fixed to when the option is originally granted and doesn't change as the company changes in value. So for example, you say you join a company when the strike price is $1 a share. Oh, you're early, you got like a really low price, but then you eventually take the opportunity to sell your shares at $10 a share when your company is like a unicorn and doing really well. You would have a gain of $9, because you would still have to exercise the option to buy your shares for that dollar strike price before you sell them.
Wow.
So the strike price is generally tied to what is called a 409A evaluation. So you'll hear oftentimes the term kind of being like, what's your 409A? Or did you go through a 409A? And with privately held businesses like startups, this is generally a requirement to perform an audit to value the business. An updated 409A will reset the strike price for new or later employees. Early in a company's life, this is usually done something like once a year upon a financing round. You'll hear, seed stage rounds, A, B, C, those are financing rounds. Later in a company's life, this happens more frequently, sometimes, twice a year. And the price per share goes up or down as the company does well or not, which is largely determined by revenue, although other metrics could be also taken into consideration by investors and the auditing firms performing the 409A.
That was going to be my next question, was who performs the 409A? Like who provides that? Like what kind of company is that? But
Yes, I believe it's a tax auditing firm.
got it. Okay.
Yeah. They're closely related to yeah, how these things go and know that the best.
Okay.
Again, not a tax professional, but we're going to dive into long-term versus short-term cap gains because this is really important. You could actually benefit by understanding and gain more money by understanding long-term versus short-term cap gains. So you can exercise your option to purchase shares at any time while you're working for the company. The federal tax rate for long-term capital gains or assets held longer than 1 year from purchase to sale could be more than 20% lower than short-term capital gain taxes. So actually exercising before the point of eventual sale is called early exercise, which allows you to retain shares after you leave. There are also potential tax benefits to exercising early, which shift you from short-term to long-term cap gains. State tax rates vary state to state, obviously, and this is implicated in short-term cap gains. For example, California doesn't treat long-term capital gains differently from regular income, which could be as high as 13.3%. So several states have 0% long-term capital gain rates, which means that you don't pay taxes at all on those gains. And then there are all sorts of other states that have like extreme in-betweens. I'm going to go over an overly simplified example to illustrate the difference between short-term and long-term capital gains. So you receive $100 in gains. Hopefully it's like, you know, many more zeros after that, but for this example. But you don't exercise until the point of sale. So your gains are considered short-term, like the same as your yearly regular income. Let's assume the federal income tax rate is 30% and the state tax rate is 10% for regular income. Your total tax rate for that year would be 40%. So you would walk away with 60% of those $100 in gains. So let's go over it in a different way. You receive $100 in gains, but you exercised your options more than a year prior to the point of sale. So you early exercised, so to speak. And your gains are considered long-term. Let's assume the federal long-term tax rate is 15% and the state you live in has a long-term rate of 5%. Your total tax rate would be 20%. So you would walk away with $80. So you can see that $20 swing. It's more beneficial to early exercise your options. Let's go on to the next slide.
Yeah. Love that breakdown. That was good.
It's hard because oftentimes you don't have the money to exercise early,
Right.
and we'll go through this in the case study. But there are ways that you kind of chip away at it, and we'll go into that later. So you generally will not receive all of your options on day one. Instead, you'll receive them over what is called a vesting period, which is usually a 4-year period in the tech community. And this is an employee retention strategy. The company wants you to stick with them long-term and will compensate you to incentivize that. Almost all options vesting includes a 1-year cliff. So if you leave after 11 months, you don't get any equity. And assuming a 4-year vesting period, you would receive 25% of your option grant by your 1-year anniversary, and then 1/36 of your grant every month thereafter. So you receive like basically a good portion after you stay, that's your 1-year anniversary, your 1-year cliff, and then it gets divided out over the next 3 years, every month after that. So that first year is really important that you stay. These details are totally up to the company and something you usually cannot negotiate. They are standardized across all of the equity grants that the company issues. You generally shouldn't negotiate the terms of the vesting period because it could be perceived that you don't intend to stay. But that doesn't mean that you can't negotiate on the amount of options that you're being offered. So I do highly recommend that you do that. That actually, if you're optimizing more on options rather than base pay, that actually is a really good signal that you really truly believe in the company's mission and you really want to stay long-term and see it be realized. Exceptions to some of these terms can be made by the company. So for example, they could ignore the cliff, the 1-year cliff, if you depart before your 1-year anniversary, and allow you to vest based on the portion of the 4-year vesting period that you've stayed through. So they can kind of look through the 4 years more as like that 48th sort of strategy. Companies cannot work in the other direction. Your employment agreement states that you have a right to the equity that you have so far vested into. You will usually have 60 days after termination or the end of employment to exercise all of your vested options. Otherwise, they expire. And this actually can sometimes be negotiated as well. Sometimes there's like a 30, 60, 90 day end of employment sort of exercise clause. But it's kind of good to know because you would want to, have some money in the bank to pay for the options that are vested. The company's board does have the ability to be more generous, like I said, extend the window, but they can never decide to be less generous. So this is actually in your favor, and definitely why you have these sorts of employment agreements.
Wow.
So let's use a case study to apply what we just learned. Congratulations, you are a mental health therapist hired by Oath. Yes, yes. You become their chief operating officer. You are being offered an equity package of 100,000 incentive stock options or ISOs with a 4-year vesting period at a 50-cent strike price. Hella cheap. First question is, how much would it cost to fully exercise all of your options? So possibly need to pop up your calculators for this, and we would love for you to put your answers in the chat.
If you're brave. I love this example though. This is good.
It's a lot of money. So it's actually $50,000 to exercise. Yes, thank you. Great. Appreciate it, Mona. You got it right. It is $50,000 to exercise all of your options at the 50-cent strike price. Next question is, how many of those options of the 100,000 incentive stock options will vest at your 1-year anniversary? So that's the 1-year cliff that we talked about. Yes, Jolene, 25,000, exactly, 1/4 of the 100K. Okay, next question is, how many options every month thereafter will vest after the next 3 years? So there's some math involved. So you got the 25K. That's 75K left over. How many options every month, per month, will you get each month thereafter?
Anyone?
It's hard because it's actually rounded out and there's like decimals, and that's kind of complicated with like, how do you get like a fraction of an option?
Ooh,
Yes.
oh!
Great. You're getting it.
Wow.
Yeah. So usually the company will kind of like either round out options at
Yes.
we'll round out those options at some point, maybe like at the end of the year or at the end of your 4 years. We'll just like kind of tack on those like 14 options at the end that kind of ended up in fractions amongst the time. Or if you leave before then, we'll maybe just like grant you those 14 options. Okay, moving on. So Oath became $1 billion company, a unicorn. Yay! Now your shares are worth $10 a share. So your equity holdings would be valued at how much? So remember, you have 100K options. They're now $10 a share. How much money did you just make?
Don't be afraid of the zeros.
Yes, Mona, $1 million. Yes. So what would be your gain after exercising the options? So remember, you have to exercise the options from the first question, and it costs so much money to exercise those options. So how much money are you actually left with after you paid to exercise the options? Yes, exactly. Perfect.
Wow.
I
I know. I didn't want to say.
Yes. Right. You still have to pay taxes. And guess what, Jolene? I didn't even go into any tax questions because it like varies state by state. And I was like, I can't even like have that. But what I did kind of want to illustrate is that, you know, if you don't exercise any shares and leave at like the 35th month mark, how many shares are vested? And this is actually quite a bit of math. So I don't know if your brains are up for it.
I don't know. Mona and Jolene have been. Like...
I'm gonna give it some time. But basically, you're taking into account, right, the shares that you get at that 1-year cliff, and then the shares that you get, you know, monthly thereafter. But then, you know, right before that 4-year vesting period is over, you leave at the 35th month. You're like, I'm done. I'm burnt out. Can't take it anymore. I'm taking what I got and I'm leaving. So how many of those shares do you have? Trying to burn a little bit of time for you all. Yes! Oh, goodness. So good.
I need to give out like prizes. This is amazing.
You know, I have some Oath swag. I was just thinking that, like, I'd love to send Jolene and Mona.
Yes. Good.
Some Oath swag for this. So yeah.
Amazing. Yes.
I'll follow up by email after to get all that information if you're interested. We got some like water bottles. We got some like big, nice tote bags. Would love to share that with you. Okay, our last question. How much money do you make on these vested shares? There's actually no math involved. So keep in mind, I said vested, not exercise. So how much money do you make on these vested shares? Nope. Oh, were you, Mona, Mona, you were answering the previous question on the 72,000 shares? So I'm looking for a dollar amount here. Yes, Jolene. 100%. You get the gold star.
I love that.
$100. Yeah.
Y'all are amazing.
So remember, you have to exercise them before you can make money off of them and have them be vested. Cool.
Amazing.
So lessons to be learned. If I can afford to take the risk, early exercise is a good idea. Saves you on tax implications. It helps you own the shares prior to making money on them. But if exercise cost is prohibitive, which usually it is, you're still going to make a lot of money if this works because you can exercise at the point of sale. Usually you can exercise at the point of sale. And so what that usually means is that you, may have to, pay a little bit more in taxes, but, the company is going to be really good and do really well. Doesn't really matter. You got a little money taken out of your bottom line, but you still go home with quite a chunk of change. So that's my spiel. That's what I got. Would love
Wow.
to answer any questions.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle. Wow. Jolene and Mona, congrats.
Super fun. Thank you
I
for
know.
yeah.
Pulling a calculator out or, doing it in your brain, I guess, maybe. Mona says this was so helpful. We have one question in the chat so far.
Okay.
I'm currently at a company as a clinician where equity was not given to clinicians. Yet on the non-clinical side of the company, they received equity. As a clinician, I have advocated for equity and repeatedly been denied, as we were told it was too high of a risk to give clinicians equity. Curious to hear your thoughts on this, and should we keep advocating?
Yep, I get what they may be getting at, which is possibly around Stark law, with like giving equity directly for your clinical care, but you get paid for clinical care. I don't know if there's anything around Stark law that they're concerned about, but we give our clinicians that are HQ equity. And I'm actually trying to figure out how one of our contracted clinicians can get equity at this point. So my answer is yes, keep advocating. I, especially building a health care company as a clinician, I mean, how do you not have clinicians like inform what you're building and be the real reason why your company is or is not successful? And so I do think that just as we pay our clinicians for being a part of the company and performing the tasks of the company, why can't equity be a part of that equation as well? So yeah, that's my answer. Keep advocating, keep maybe trying to understand what they mean by too high of a risk. I would try to get that more like understood so that then you could, have that discussion.
Yeah, I experienced that at a startup that was kind of similar to what they were saying was the Stark law, but then also I was offered equity at another startup where I was doing clinical and administrative work at the same time. So thank you for mentioning that. That's really good. I'm happy to hear you want them to keep advocating.
Yes, because even in performing at a health tech company, like you are doing administrative work, like regardless. And so you could argue that that is happening. And that's what you're compensating for. Yeah.
All right. We have two more questions right now. One, Jolene says, I recently painfully learned about clawback, buyback equity clauses. Have you seen these in your experience? That's a great question.
No, I'm actually too early in our company to maybe understand that because there's no like realized equity at this point. Or ability to realize any of the equity in the company. So yeah, I am not experienced in this, but I'm sorry, yeah, if that was not good. I guess I don't understand. Jolene, do you, or
if you want to put more about it in the chat, Jolene,
yeah,
like,
that would be great. Yeah,
I'm not sure if it was like if it was like a resignation, did they lay off people? Like I'm wondering like why, like what happened? Because I've heard like different stories from different people that's happened to, but the circumstances are also very different.
Yeah, what's interesting, maybe I've heard like if you leave a company and you have equity in the company, but you don't really know if the company is going to do well, the company may offer to buy back your equity to have the company, as they grow, have more equity to then give to their future employees, and then have you actually realize gains that actually weren't fully realized or are not fully realized at this time. However, I hope it wasn't forced or required. That would be indicate the company can choose to, they can choose to buy back all the vested equity at that strike price. Yeah, that I never knew that they could enforce to do that. Maybe giving that as an option is okay, but I didn't know that that was like, yeah, part of, wow, that is some like small fine print, very specific stuff there. Oh, it was forced at a penny. That's so good to know, Jolene. Oh my goodness. Yes. Wow, you were really early too. Gosh.
Oh,
Okay.
so sorry.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, that's such a good piece of information to know.
Wow.
Mm,
Another question, how much equity is normal to get at an early stage startup?
really good question. This, as you know, varies and depends on maybe when you come into the company, like how early of an employee you are, and then also your position. So executive positions obviously get a little more, co-founder positions get more. You guys actually get to set the equity. Usually there's like a 10% employee stock option pool that you get, that they work off of. So this 10% is usually like 10% for like all employees of that company in the company's existence. And so that quite honestly will get smaller and smaller as the company gets bigger and bigger, like the pool that is available. Yeah, I'm even like hesitant to even like offer a number. It really does, like I said, depend on how early you come in, what your position is. That's basically the two things that I'll say about that.
And then also like what they offer and how they're offering it. Like if they say like, you
Good
can
point.
take this part of your salary and have more op shares, or, you can say no right now. Like there are so many different ways that
That is such
they
a
could
good point.
offer that. Yeah.
Yeah, use equity as a negotiating tactic. And ask for maybe 2 or 3 different offer options. So you can kind of see like where equity can range for you. Because I think that's the best way to kind of know. Like if they're just going to give you one number, you're going to be like, oh, how much more can I get and how much less can I get? And really, what do you want to optimize for? Like, Jacqueline was saying, like more cash or more equity. But I think asking for maybe like 2 or 3 offer packages can be a good way to understand that.
Yeah. Okay. One more question. Vesting equity, these all sound great. However, I see news articles about health tech companies reducing their hiring or laying people off. Is this a trend you are seeing in the field as a whole? And if so, will this trend continue?
Mm.
I don't know if they want me to answer that or you, but
I would love for you to answer that. Yeah.
well,
I
I've done like lots of research on the projection of this entire field. The valuation of the field over the next 6 to 7 years is only going to quadruple. So I think that right now, I think what I've seen with the trends in the market are that people are laying off to prepare for what they think is going to be a recession. And some people are currently experiencing a recession now. And so that's just, it's a very economic play, business play that a lot of people are using. And also there were a lot of companies that were overvalued and didn't make enough money. And so they hired a lot of staff. They didn't need those people. So there's a lot of different combinations that I've seen across our field, but I only see it continuing to grow, and hopefully we have more people like Michelle starting companies where they're really investing in the employees so that they can have that experience, that quality experience working in a digital health startup. That's mine.
Yes, I just want to echo what you said, Jacqueline. Yeah, underline it, all caps it around, a lot of predictions for digital health are saying like mental health is the next, biggest bet. And so if you're in, health tech, but specifically mental health tech, I think, you're going to only see that grow. I think when evaluating which company to work for, I would really look into how well they treat their providers. Um, Provider burnout is at an all-time high. And we want to make sure, especially with the ease and the scale in which tech can grow, that doesn't further the burnout of providers. And so we're considering this deeply within Oath. We really center our specialists, elevate them to their rightful place and full scope of practice, and then also be able to radically support them outside of their practice. We allow them to own all of the content that they create, so that they can use it in their own practices and build their own businesses. Because why not? You share, it doesn't make sense for it to, be that way otherwise. And to, receive the mental health support that you need as well, to go and do that for others. I think your company should be doing that. I think it really matters that is a posture or position of the company, when they expect you to support people radically, that they do the same to their own. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Wow. That's a great answer. Any other questions before we wrap today? This was amazing.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I am so energized about talking about this, because I think it's something we don't talk about. I think it's something that is not well understood. And so the more that we talk about it, the more that we share our experiences, the better we can elevate our discipline and defend it and be able to really show people the full value in which we'll work.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Okay, and we will be in touch about that Oath swag for Mona and Jolene for participating. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone.